Alright, we're going to continue. I just wanted to let it sit for a minute so I have a time frame in my window. Don't worry, we're not playing the game. We're not playing Gollum again on stream. Ever again. Never happening again. Somebody would have to pay me money to play this game on stream again. So, I have all the collectibles. We're going to go through the collectibles first.
Can make our teeth sharp again with this one.
It's a whetstone. Then borak hair.
Sticky, but we can make some strings out of them, perhaps. Nasty little shrieker, like in the old times of the orcs deep under misty mountains.
Leather.
For shoes, but we needs no shoes. Scraps
Piece of metal.
Orcs made that for the big war machine.
That specific war machine is Grond, the wolf head, the battering ram.
We can
old metal
use
spoon.
Bird feather.
Feather.
We likes tasty birdses.
Picture of Baggins.
Baggins. We hates it, but doesn't really look like him.
Eyes of a spider.
Eyes. Maybe she will like it. She's lost some. Oxes build all their things with these, always nails.
Piece of borak
lost a
dust.
tooth. We lost most of ours too.
That's what meth does to you. Another piece of metal.
Scraps. They are nice and shiny, my dear. Let's keep them.
Dead beetle.
Is it tasty, my love? No, dead and dry. Orc tooth. Full of holes, but very strong, my precious. Not much use anymore, but who knows?
Rope. Elvish rope, specifically. Animal figurine.
Nice carvings for children. Very nice. We used to eat those at home long time ago, before they sent us away. Oh! We used to eat those at home long time ago, before they sent us away. Oh! Only
fish bones.
Nice fish is gone. Elves
Little
make
bell.
terrible sounds with it. We better keep it.
Heart
From the
string.
harps is very strong.
Piece of
Beautiful
marble.
stone, but cold, like the elf king. Grandmother used to wear these.
Shiny
Baggins wore
button.
them on his belly. Funny things.
Splinter.
Tiny part of a much bigger thing. Don't pay attention and I sting. Elf King
Pearl.
likes these. Always alone with lots of shiny pearls in his lonely palace.
I don't know, pearl necklace. If you know, you know.
Digs
Badger
deep,
claw.
never weeps. What was it? Badger.
Twig
Twig
and flower.
flower. What was the word again? Lost it, my love. We are getting old. Badger
Bird bones.
is already. Poor bird.
Elvish
Maybe
figurine.
Master made this. Looks like things in his rooms.
Shard.
From elvish pots, or broken or dead.
I guess Link went through there.
Elf
Piece of
feasting
garland.
With this, we keeps it, remembering nice cook.
Wooden
What's this
fork.
for?
I know y'all chasing that.
Squirrel food. Let's keep it for bad times.
Somebody please clip that. That'd be funny.
Hooks
Hook.
is good for fishing.
Or for mouths.
How
Piece
did
of
we
mirror.
get so old and thin, my precious?
That's all the collectibles. Alright, y'all. For the long part now. Oh. Hope y'all are ready for hearing my not so good voice for a while. We're going to read the lore compendium. Shady Mountains. Shadow Mountains. Gollum and Mordor. Gollum is a strange creature. Tolkien had trouble fitting him into the Lord of the Rings story after introducing him in The Hobbit with a different concept. Ultimately, Gollum became an ancestor of the current Shire Hobbits. His relatives probably belonged to the Stoor, who dwelled at the Anduin River, where they went boating and fishing, living in holes at the riverbanks. The One Ring has prolonged Gollum's life unnaturally, but Gollum has also become very strong. He never became a wraith, which shows that he rarely used the ring and that his resilience matched that of a hobbit. Sauron summoned all the dark and foul creatures, calling them to Mordor. As Gandalf suspects, Sauron's call also drew Gollum to Mordor, and while he lingered in the mountains, ultimately, Sauron's henchmen caught him. Sauron did not know about Gollum before, or would he have hunted him for him straight away? Or he would have hunted for them straight away. Yeah, look, reading it and talking at the same time is not my strong suit. I apologize. Whether the Nazgul sensed that Gollum was there lurking in the vicinity of Mordor, we cannot honestly know. However, the Nazgul would have been notified once his presence was detected. As leaders of the armies at the Tower of Sorcery and Minas Morgul, they dwelled close to Gollum's hideout. The Beast Pits. Barad-dûr. To describe Barad-dûr as a tower is an understatement. When Frodo sat down on the high seat at Amon Hen, he perceived the Dark Tower as an iron fortress, battlement upon battlement. Sauron had rebuilt it long after the armies of elves and men had razed it to the ground. The tower's foundations had survived, however, tied to the existence of the One Ring. Even the elves could not destroy them. The inhabitants. Not all inhabitants of Barad-dûr were orcs. There were slaves, mostly humans. Undead creatures like the Nazgul and other terrible beings dwelled there as well. The Black Númenóreans are a particular type of men that already swore fealty to Sauron when he corrupted Númenor. Their alliance with the darkness made them powerful sorcerers like the Witch King or the Mouth of Sauron. They were an evil antithesis to Aragorn and his noble Dúnedain, who defended the borders of the Shire. Long-aged men, for those that don't know. Basically, just super men. Borks. Borks are a hybrid of different kinds of strong animals. The wild pig being prominent among them. This is why we thought them to be omnivores. Tolkien mentioned great beast as part of Sauron's army. However, the Borks are entirely our creation. So it's just something to do with Daedric's game. And they got bullied into no longer making a second one. RIP. Mines. The Black Pits. Sauron gets mostly iron and obsidian out of the mines, which he uses for forging weapons and strengthening fortifications of his stronghold. He also uses the precious metal he acquires to pay or bribe other nations like the Haradrim. At the same time, the pits are a place to eliminate insubordinate soldiers, enslaved people, or criminals, quotation marks. The workers primarily consist of men and orcs. Among them, the Frail Man has a unique role. His tattoos show he is part of a higher southern cult. He was a nobleman who fell from grace. Sauron became angry with him, had him captured, and placed him in the mines. The tattoo might have contained magical powers, like the Wosis use, but time and exhaustion would have depleted these powers. Halls of Grond. Living quarters and construction site. The orcs and evil men had their living quarters in the lower halls. Barad-dûr is under constant construction, ever being built and rebuilt, making room for more terrible monsters and weapon factories. The machinery constructed here is the famous battering ram Grond that will break the city gates of Minas Tirith. Named after the famous hammer Sauron's lord wielded in his terrible underground fortress, Grond is carefully decked with metal scales carved with runes full of dark magic to smite the Dark Lord's foes. If you look at the top left of your screen, kind of centered, that's Grond. It's described in the books as being a wolf head. Slave barracks. Orc breeding. Tolkien's writings may have many different thoughts on the nature and origin of orc breeding. He did not seem to be quite sure himself how it worked. However, some facts are consistent throughout his stories. Orcs are beings from the same family as humans. They need to eat, drink, and sleep, and they can probably multiply. But on the other hand, Tolkien often writes about them being bred or multiplying quickly, so we went with the idea of a breeding facility where orcs are raised in vitro combined with black magic and the rituals of Sauron's cultists. The eggs of orc mothers get separated from their wombs and fertilized. This process happens behind the membrane at the top of the breeding facilities. Then the embryonic orc larvae are fed and raised in the dark and murky waters until they are ripe to be extracted and raised by other orcs. Bird Tower. Spies of Sauron. In Middle-earth, animals and plants are sentient beings that can take sides in the struggle between good and evil. For example, Gandalf states that the enemy has many spies, even some birds are on his side. The Vala, responsible for growing things, created the plants and animals. However, when her husband, the great craftsman, created the dwarves, she became jealous and wanted the animals and plants to be able to protect themselves. Therefore, later beings like the great eagles and the Ents were endowed with intelligence and wisdom. They could make moral decisions, and some of them turned bad, like Old Man Willow. Therefore, simple animals like birds or even plants can become evil or corrupted, as is already stated in The Hobbit. Tower of Light. The Candleman. Repentance is a recurrent topic in Tolkien's writings. Even Sauron gets an offer from Gandalf before ultimately being dispelled from the Order of Wizards. Can men and women who have worked for Sauron be redeemed? Yes, there is a chance. Having betrayed his old and noble family in Ithilien, the Candleman has been in Sauron's service for a long time. Nevertheless, he still remembers a life with his family, sometimes yearning for it. But while he's being intimidated and controlled by Sauron's totalitarian system, turning his back on the Dark Lord is not an easy choice to make. Execution Chamber. The Cult of Sauron in Barad-dûr. Sauron has established in Barad-dûr a cult similar to the one in Númenor, where he once served as an advisor to the evil kings. It is a cult of sorcerers and necromancers venerating the evil power beyond and the great Lord of Darkness. The cult serves Sauron's purpose remarkably well because his subjects fear and loathe it, and its highest representatives, the Nazgul. Tolkien sometimes hints at his evil antagonist's dark arts and practices, but he rarely describes them in detail. All subjects who are not strictly following the cult's directive end up as sacrifices in the Tower of Light. aka get fucked. Water in Barad-dûr. Although the land of Mordor is dry and parched, the Dark Lord needs water for many purposes, especially his machines. His servants too, at least orcs and beasts, need to drink, as Frodo observes. Moreover, Sauron's dark powers can influence natural resources like water flowing out of Morgul Vale. So we decided he designed a special liquid in Barad-dûr called Mormac, brewed in the sewers and then led down to feed the orc larvae, borks, and other beasts to make them stronger and adapt to the Dark Lord's evil influence. That makes sense. That's a good creative move. Catacombs. Spiders in Mordor. The Mordor spiders are the spawn of Shelob, whom, according to Tolkien, had many children. On our story, some of them were used for experiments in Barad-dûr and then left to themselves in abandoned mining tunnels. Pretty simple, straight cut. Service Gate. Escaping the Dark Tower. Of course, Sauron was well aware of Gollum's existence and his intentions. Having warned the One Ring, Gollum was too important to just let him slip away. Sauron hoped that if Gollum left Mordor, he would lead him straight to the ring. Therefore, he let him go. At least, that is what Frodo later suspects. Shelob's Lair. Shelob. Even Gandalf was troubled and afraid when he heard Faramir's report of Frodo's decision to enter Mordor by the path of Cirith Ungol, the Spider's Cleft. This giant spider is not an animal. She is an ancient being descendant of the terrible Ungoliant, a demon creature of darkness and gluttony. Shelob guards the pass of Cirith Ungol, and Sauron lets her be. Though not as a servant of the Dark Lord, she serves his purposes, and the orcs respectfully refer to her as her ladyship. Gollum seems to have a pact with Shelob, and he worships her. Cellars. The Hunt for the Ring. A good photo of their depiction of the Nazgul. After Gollum did not lead him to the ring, Sauron secretly sent his most powerful servants, the Nazgul, to the Anduin River, where he rightfully thought the ring had initially been found. However, he wrongly assumed that Bilbo Baggins, who had taken the ring from Gollum, also belonged to Gollum's old tribe. Sauron had never heard of the Shire, as it did not exist yet when he had last been alive. None of his servants knew about it either. The Shire, part of the former king of Arnor, was given to the halflings as a place to settle. Their country was tiny and meaningless, and thus not well known. Sent in the wrong direction, the Nazgul searched the river in vain, and Sauron lost precious time. Great Cavern. Halls of the Elven King. In the north of Mirkwood, the Wood Elves built a strong fortress in the like of Doriath, their fortress of old, to protect their people in times of danger and war. Such times had arrived when the shadow grew again, and Sauron's forces frequently appeared close to the woodland realm. After his lonely time in the Misty Mountains, the Smeagol part of Gollum longs for company and friendship. Though he's terrified by the piercing bright eyes of the elves, Mel, the blind elf, appears less dangerous in Smeagol's mind. Moreover, since Mel is also a captive, the other elves distrust her. She seems to be an ideal companion to help him escape. Gwyndol's Chambers. Mel's Magic. Mel is one of the elven magicians, a student of Gwyndol, the Riddle Master, who learned from the great elvish masters in Doriath. Mel's ways of influencing the reality around her is by enchanting water. In her way, she shows similar powers to Elrond, who with Gandalf's help was able to release the power of the Barad-dûn when the Nazgul tried to cross the ford close to Rivendell. Mel needs to be in contact with the water source like a river or a pond, and since all waters are united in Tolkien's mythology, she can telepathically talk to a chosen person when they are close to water. Tolkien describes telepathic powers in a few places, like at the end of The Lord of the Rings, when Elrond, Galadriel, and Gandalf sit together in silence and speak only from mind to mind before they have to part. Yeah. We're almost done, y'all. King's Chambers. The Elven King. King Thranduil lost his beautiful wife, the mother of Legolas. We do not know where and when, but it must have greatly grieved him. His private chambers reflect his love for beautiful things and carven stones, his love and hunting under the stars, but also his sadness and loneliness. After the dragon Smaug was killed by Bard the Bowman, the Elven King also got a share of Smaug's hoard, and the emeralds of Gurion he loved so much. Thranduil probably does not spend much time in these chambers, maybe only to reflect and think about the past or enjoy his beautiful collection. King's Gardens. The King's Gardens. The king and his family live in the palace, as do many servants, guards, hunters, and artisans. From time to time they relax in the King's Gardens. Elves are immortal, but they can die in battle. A path of mask and lights in the garden's southern parts serve as a place of remembrance. After the fall of the dragon Smog, the elves started to rekindle their trade with Del and Isgaroth on the Long Lake. They set up a small place for trade at the east gate close to the river. Banners show their trading alliance with dwarves and men down the river. Bell Tower. The Bell Tower. Far from Thranduil's halls remain some ruins of former elvish settlements. One of them is the Bell Tower. Its magical bells once honored the fallen soldiers after the war against Sauron at the end of the Second Age. Among them, Thranduil's father, the Old King. Traces of the bell's magic can still be felt, and though evanescent, still have the power to keep away evil creatures. Truthlings and Lariel. The Truthlings can affect a person's mind without them being aware of it. Watching the hypnotic patterns of light and colors dazzle the mind and makes the person open and truthful about everything they are asked. The Lariel, on the other hand, an orange lichen, contains elements that keep the brain clear and the person wide awake, protecting them from the dazzling hypnotic influence of the Truthlings. The Breach. The Haze. The Haze is a magical wall of fog protecting the Elven King's realm. Strong spells are woven into it by the Elven magicians, spells that resemble the power of their ancient woodland realm of Doriath under King Thingol. At the source, the Elven magicians of Thranduil's court have created a nexus of natural energies of water and wind to create a magical barrier around the Elven realm, preventing anyone from leaving or entering without the king's permission. The knowledge and magic used by Gwendol and his scholars derive from a similar but more powerful spell that protected the hidden woodland realm of Doriath. Stepping into the haze makes one's mind foggy and disoriented. Thorin Oakenshield and his company of dwarves experienced similar effects when they stepped into the glades of the celebrating elves. Elven magic is very subtle. Tolkien used words like weaving and singing to describe their kind of communal magic. The Elven magicians met, sang, and created or awoke the powers inherent in wind and water. Its power lasts as long as the conditions remain in place that created it. King's Grove. Celebrating at King's Grove. The elves are celebrating one of their famous seasonal woodland feasts. Since the haze has protected them well in the past, they do not expect any danger. Magical lamps usually secure the camp, making everyone entering fall asleep instantly. Unfortunately, not all the lamps were in place when the orcs attacked. And then the Fire Nation. No, I'm kidding. Forest Path. Paths in Mirkwood. Gollum followed an old path through Mirkwood that was once part of the elvish settlements near the mountains of Mirkwood, where the Old King, father of Thranduil, had his central places of power. When the shadow moved into Mirkwood and slowly northwards, the Wood Elves slowly retreated northwards as well. Other sources say they wanted to put some distance between themselves and the dwarves of Khazad-dûm, with whom they quarreled a lot. We're almost done with it, y'all. We're almost there. Ruins Gate. Ancient ruins in Mirkwood. The elves of Mirkwood had not always lived underground or out in the woods. The Sindar, who were leading the Sylvan elves, used to build great castles like the one that became Dol Guldur after being occupied by Sauron. The ruined castle in the mountains had at first been a watchtower. Its name, Caris Mindun, means precisely that. Alright, last two. North Tower. After the elves moved north and the tower became a more central place in their realm, the elves rebuilt it into a resting place for the queen, the mother of Legolas. When the shadow crept into Mirkwood again, the elves abandoned the castle and other buildings in the area, moving farther north. We can still find traces of young Legolas within the castle next to those of the orcish occupiers. The Source. The inherent powers of the water representing emotions and the powers of the air representing thoughts are magnified and bound to the purposes desired by the elven magicians who created the haze. Elves usually work with powerful songs and words, sometimes enhanced by magical instruments or rings. In the times of old, the elven smiths who forged the rings of power also created lesser magical rings, and it is likely that at least King Thranduil and Gwendol, the Riddle Master, possessed such items and used them in creating the spell. From the source, the magic flows into the enchanted river that runs along the borders of the wooden realm. As long as the source remains active, the magic flows. However, dark powers have long spoiled the water of the enchanted river. And the last one, the source. The nature of elven magic. Elven magic uses the energy of natural phenomenon, as does magic of the higher beings. Tolkien described it as a form of art, at least in the eyes of the elves. For mortal men, it is plain magic, dangerous and confusing to the mind. The makings of many elven magicians or artists enhance the spells so they can also affect other elves or magical creatures. Gollum was able to destroy the source because Mel, who had once helped with its creation, was there to guide and protect him. First, the connection of the natural elements, wind and water, had to be severed. Second, Mel needed to use her innate powers to let the source dwindle. And that is our final stream of the Lord of the Rings Gollum. I love Lord of the Rings. I hope that maybe a patch comes out that fixes some of the controls in this game, since they're no longer going to make it the sequel or whatever the follow-up Lord of the Rings game was. I love some Tolkien work, y'all. This is going to be it for this portion of the stream, so if you've watched it up to this point, I appreciate it. I hope y'all have a good one when you watch this in the future, and God bless.